So I recently picked up this book called The Phoenix or the Flame, and it's a collection of essays talking about the development of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix as a book and how it grew as a story and the way it became such a long book, going into all of these different outlines that J.K. Rowling had about the book. And it's a very fascinating book to experience. I read it all in one sitting, and it was like an info dump, but it was the best info dump that I could ever ask for as a Harry Potter fan. But this book prompted me to actually talk about something that I feel like at first I thought nobody was actually talking about. Nobody was actually, I wasn't hearing anybody actually talk about this, but it is mentioned within this book, and it is mentioned within a footnote. And I kind of wanted to bring it over and kind of talk about it in my own thoughts and the way I kind of perceived it. I think every single Harry Potter book has its own sort of mirror or twin, except for Goblet of Fire. And why Goblet of Fire usually does kind of feel like the outcast, both in book and also way more in terms of the movies. It's a book of huge events and huge mysteries, and the movie almost feels like it grabs the book and shakes it and then gets rid of a lot of things because it has to, a lot of things, and it just kind of restructures things, and it turns out the movie is a little awkward, but then at the same time it somehow works because of that thematic grandness of the whole thing. Really, the first one to start with obviously is number one, which is Philosopher's Stone / Sorcerer's Stone. It wasn't until I got to the seventh book that I realized, oh my god, number one is obviously mirroring number 7 in many ways. And of course, this is the most obvious one, and it's the one I'm leading with. We do see a lot of similarities between number 1 and number 7, and that would be really obvious because you're getting the beginning and you're getting the end. There's going to be a lot of parallels and a lot of callbacks, but what I mean is it really does go into so many different references, especially, and I'm mainly talking about the books, just because the books feel like one cohesive thing, of course, whereas the movies are all different, and that's also what makes them really magical and fun. Obviously, in the first book, Harry goes to Gringotts for the first time. Harry goes to Diagon Alley for the first time. And in the seventh book, he goes back to Gringotts and he explores Gringotts. And it's him walking in there again. And the way that I remember reading the seventh book and thinking, oh, wow, after it's described how he's feeling as he's walking into Gringotts and reflecting, that sort of magical moment where I was pulled back and I was living in the past again with Harry discovering the wizarding world again. And so that was really fun to see that parallel. And then aside from that, there's also the Dumbledore parallel. Harry thinks a lot about Dumbledore in the seventh book, especially at the beginning, which is the reason why that book made me cry like on page 15 or something like that, just because of the way that Harry's thinking about Dumbledore. It's very, very heartbreaking, I would say, when Harry's reflecting on everything that's happened, and he's learning from Dumbledore, and he asks him questions, and he can always ask him questions, and then in the seventh book, he's realizing he can't ask him questions anymore. So it's touching, but then there's also that parallel. The Mirror of Erised is mentioned in his thoughts as he's regretting not asking Dumbledore what he saw in the Mirror of Erised, which we all know it was Grindelwald. Although, I don't know. There's also like a little joke that Ron says about them not fitting together in the, like under the cloak anymore. It kind of brings you right back to when, Harry first got his cloak in the first book and they snuck around and stuff like that. So yeah, there's that big parallel. Now, the one that actually woke me up to this theory, or not theory, was Chamber of Secrets. But really, when I was reading Half-Blood Prince was when I really felt the Chamber of Secrets influence on that book. So there's that other reflection, number 2 and number 6. That's where they connect. And I think this one is the heaviest one. I think the presence of snakes and Slytherin as like a symbol, and Tom Riddle, and the vain new professor, Lockhart, Slughorn, the violent hexes that are happening. It's almost like a whodunit mystery, which very immediately resembles all the whodunit from the second book and the mysteries happening. And you might say there's mysteries in every book, but really it's very, very obviously embodying that same mystery vibe from the second book. It's like the whodunit, which doesn't really happen in every single book. There's also Draco Malfoy, who is a bigger presence in the sixth book, of course, a huge presence, but he is also a highlight, not a huge presence perhaps because it was a shorter book, but he's a highlight in the second book. He's a big presence in the second movie, I will say. They make a big highlight of him, and that makes that the tone of that world, of that second movie slash book, very Slytherin-like, very Snake-like. There's the Parseltongue stuff, and there's, again, Tom Riddle. We see Tom Riddle's memories, and we see him as a 15-year-old, and then we see him, or a 16-year-old, and then we see him and his further memories and way more backstory for him. So there's obviously that big parallel. I know all of this is common knowledge for huge Harry Potter fans, and I'm learning that now because of this book, because I'm learning to see that, more people do actually, have actually obviously realized this theory, that the books mirror each other. Then, of course, there's the third connection, which I didn't make until I read this book. So this is what prompted me to really make the video, was I definitely had connected 2 and 6 and 1 and 7. Stupidly enough, I never really thought about furthering that connection. And this book really, because this book talks strictly really about Order of the Phoenix, this book makes the parallel between Order of the Phoenix and Prisoner of Azkaban. And of course, tone-wise is not the same, but there are huge similarities again. The Dementors being a huge presence in both books. They were actually originally going to be a much bigger presence in Order of the Phoenix book, but they were sort of more replaced with Bellatrix and more of a presence of the Death Eaters. We've got also the mention of the Time Turners being in both 3 and 5 only, and so there's that, which it's not a huge, it's not like they use the Time Turners in the 5th book, but they mention them. So it's almost like there's always that callback. Sirius Black is a huge presence in both the 3rd book and, of course, the 5th book. So there's that Sirius Black element to it. There's a lot of value in Order of the Phoenix as a book, as a story for the main plot. And I think a lot of people definitely don't think about that and don't consider that when they sort of read the whole series in one go and realize that the 5th book is making them go really slow because it's a long ass book, and it really forces you to slow down. And I've seen many interviews about different people, celebrities, actors, directors of the movies, and just everybody talks about how that book slowed them down, or they couldn't get through it. It just got chunkier, blah blah blah, this and that. There's all these different sort of perspectives, and I think the reaction is that, whoa, that book was so incredibly big, to the point where J.K. Rowling was it was way too long. But I literally think that it was fine. I think that it needed to be this long. She knew it needed to be this long. I mean, it is this long because she had the power to have that be this long, but it needed to be that long to tell that type of story. And the outlines in this really explain why it became longer. And there's actually a whole timeline of Harry's school year that she actually details out from beginning to end of his school year, and how the events sort of changed from the beginning of the draft, or the outlines, to the final book. I feel like I just spoke the most words I've ever spoken in one go. I'm very passionate about Order of the Phoenix being not only a great book and story, but also I think it's so essential and so necessary, and a lot of people just don't like it. And it makes me so sad. And of course, that parallel of the 3rd and the 5th really feels strong because of that Order of the Phoenix / Dumbledore's army / familiar vibes. There's the corruption. And Cornelius Fudge is a huge character in both the 3rd and the 5th, really more than the other ones. And so there is that. And so we get to number 4, because it's the Outcast. And really, it makes sense. Like I said at the beginning, not only is the book sort of outcastish because of the nature of the events in the book, but also the movie. The movie is weird. The movie is weird because Mike Newell, the director, didn't really care for the book. He did read it, allegedly. He skimmed it. So you can tell that the movie is just more of a movie. The movie's a movie. Whereas when you're watching number 3, for example, Prisoner of Azkaban, you can tell that it is an individual movie, and it's very much so, but it is playing a bigger role. It's playing a bigger role in terms of the bigger story, which is Harry Potter. It's really adapting the series, and it's adapting the heart of it. And I think 1 and 2 do the same job in a different font. You know what I'm saying? But then there's number 4, where you're you kind of have to disconnect the books when you're watching that movie to enjoy it. I think for like a long time, for the longest time as a child and just like as a teenager, I enjoyed watching the movie as for fun. I don't enjoy that movie as much now, just because I feel like I've reread Goblet of Fire a couple of times in the past couple of years, and it's such a good book. You can't compare to that movie. Like when you actually put them side by side, the movie's like half of it. The movie's like 40% of it even. So that's like the power of somebody who understands the story and the core of the story. Not saying the Goblet of Fire movie is a bad movie by any means. It's actually great, and it has all the plot points and the whimsy, and it's got like, it could have been worse. It could have been way, way worse. And it's a great movie, and I think it's actually kind of funny and awkward and fun in its own way. But when you compare it to the book, like when you actually look at turn to look at the book, they're very different, and you just feel like, okay, well, I kind of would rather read the book, because then there's more happening. There's more things happening. Like the scene where Ron and Harry eavesdrop on Hagrid and Madame Maxine in the fourth book. That's like top favorite scenes of the whole series, in my opinion. I don't know why I like it so much, but I think the nature of the eavesdropping is very like classic Victorian vibes, which I think gives it this air of realism that overshadow the fact that we're talking about giants and half giants. You know what I'm saying? That's what makes it so fun and so good and so appealing. We're not reading this story that is about whimsical stuff and that's it, and that's about it. But you're like really getting a sense of a community. And so that makes the movie an outcast on its own, just because I feel like movies 1, 2, 3 are their own thing. They're beloved in their own ways, especially 3. Movie 5 is beloved by me, and a lot of people I know that for a fact. And then number 6 is usually a cult classic for a lot of people. And then there's number 7, which is the best of the best. Movie number 7 and 8, of course. Then you've got those that are individually great in their own ways, especially the very last one. But then you have number 4. Then you have Goblet of Fire, and it kind of stands strangely enough. I think there's just this thing about the Triwizard Tournament that I've never connected with. I don't care for the Triwizard Tournament. Like, I don't care about it. If I was at Hogwarts and it was going on, I would be not interested in it. And not because it's like, it's too cool for it. I have no interest. I don't know why. It just seems very reckless and seems very stupid. And it also seems very pointless. And I know a lot of people share this thought with me, is like, there's just like, when you're an audience member, you're just not watching anything happen except for the dragon one, barely. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, I just don't find any fascination in the Triwizard Tournament, and I don't find it any fascination in the book either. But that's the testament to how great the book is, because even though the whole book is really about the Triwizard Tournament, and I don't care for it, I still love that book so much, because it has way many more things going on. The mysteries and the characters and the growth and all of that is sacrificed a little bit in the movie to make space for, visuals and all that. And I think it makes it more fun for us as an audience.